Okay. Yeah.
Peace
First
and
of all,
power, prosperity. Peace, power, and prosperity. It's your brother Yafeuh Balagoon back at you one more time, one more again. I have a living legend right here today with Mr. Ernest McMillan, a living legend, a man that has laid down the foundation for a lot of us that are doing the work now. A lot of us think that we just came out of nowhere and started doing this work, but in fact, it's people and individuals specifically Mr. Ernest McMillan, and I say your name just so folks can make sure in my generation be familiar with your name, but of course you're Mr. McMillan to me. But I definitely appreciate you for going on. How are you feeling today, sir?
I'm feeling good, considering everything that's going on. I just want to let you know that I'm standing on the shoulders of my ancestors, those who came before me, that led the way, provided the light and the wisdom for us to carry on the struggle and give us an assignment today. Our assignment is to follow in their footsteps and do all we can with the grace of God and with the gifts we've been given applied to this time and place.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. So my understanding, I know that you come from a very active family. I know your mother. They called her referred to as Mama Mac. I know. I bought your book. I got your book. So you
Okay.
know I've been going through your book, and I know you got an entire history of just activism, and I know that your family is very much so engaged. But the thing that keeps coming up, and I heard about it on yesterday, Dr. Delaney from the African American Museum when he was speaking in regards to Mr. Fahim J. Minka. He was talking about the OK supermarket right there on the board, in front of the board, and he was talking about that Mr. Minka had advised the African American users some of the things that they had wrong, at least in his perspective, they had wrong. But you know, I think with the OK supermarket is a story that needs to be retold and retold again. Could you please advise us how did this thing with the OK supermarket? How did that get started?
Yeah, I just want to thank you again for allowing me to have this space with you. My mission today is, and my primary object in life today is pass on the torch to lift up support for our youth today, to make sure we can have the support we need to continue moving forward. So I'm just honored to be able to share with you what I can, and I love to let you know that we started the the supermarket boycott in South Dallas after some work had been done. We were trying to figure out, because we just started our roots building and our community building in South Dallas in 1967, 68. And so we were publishing a newsletter. We were doing things, getting out in the community. We were fighting against the war in Vietnam. We were opposing the draft that was going on, that was conscripting young men, especially men of color, to go fight a war that had no bearing on our lives. And so, as Brother Muhammad Ali would say, no Vietnamese have never called me a nigger. So we were following that kind of example that he led. So getting our roots started in South Dallas, we decided we needed to find out what the community felt was priority. We want to base our actions on what the community felt was most meaningful to them, what was most stressing for them for us to take on. So we had a series of community meetings throughout South Dallas and Oak Cliff. We went to Cedar Crest CME Church, the Bethlehem Center, several other black churches in the community, and we sent out flyers as the people come out. We wanted to find out what's on your mind and hearts. So at every meeting we had, which was about 3 meetings in about a month and a half, we discovered that there were many priorities people had. This whole meeting was facilitated by a young man named Mike Morris. We called him Babuki, who was the facilitator. He put forth a lot of issues to everyone, and we had people raise their hand and also fill out cards to tell them what was number one, number two, number three for them. So we talked about police brutality. We talked about education for our youth. We talked about all these. We identified as many issues we could and in the community, poverty, racism, so forth. But the main thing that kept coming up over and over again at these four churches was food insecurity.
Mm.
The fact that people could not We had to travel miles and miles to get food to feed their families. And so we said, well, what's some of the problems with that? So there was one chain of supermarkets in South Dallas. They had 11 stores owned by two white men. 10 of their 11 stores was located in South Dallas. They called themselves the OK Supermarkets. So it's just like a fast food uh, place. And so what they ended up doing was they had higher prices than regular stores, and they would also provide you with credit. So you could buy things from them without having the money, but when you come back to pay your bill, it'll be 5, 10 times more than you had estimated to be. They were raising the price. The prices were already high. You know, in the grocery market, like Safeway or something like that, you go there, you can probably save 10 cents on a dollar, you know, for everything you want to buy. But in OK Supermarket, you were spending $1.20 more than you needed to
Mm.
spend. So they had jacked up the prices. They were charging exorbitant fees. They were refusing to hire black people to be clerks or to be the butchers or to work at any of their stores. It was run by white men who hired only people of their color to be the managers and the workers in the store. So when we heard this, we said we need to stop and do something. So we organized a boycott. We said we're going to have people at each one of these stores in South Dallas. Every one of those 10 stores, we would have. We start on a certain day. I think it was in June of 1968 when we launched the boycott. We had enough people in our ranks to have ample resources of people at the supermarket. Each one to have at least 10 or 15 people in each one of those 10 stores.
Mm.
So there were people getting off the bus coming home from work. They see us demonstrate, they would join in. There were people who were going to buy from the store when they heard what we were trying to do, they would turn around and go home. There were maybe one or two out of them who would say, man, I got to eat. So they were going to the store. But basically, people were honoring the boycott or they were joining with us in marching. We had signs that said, don't shop where you can't be hired. Don't
Right.
pay more for your groceries than you pay anywhere else. Things like that. We call them robbers. We call them extortionists. So we had signs depicting our issues and we had flyers we were handing out. And so every so we had good results. The newspapers reported that our boycott was 95% successful. People were not shopping in the store.
Mm.
But where we made one mistake, perhaps looking back as it was a mistake, we decided to launch the boycott. We needed to go inside one of these stores, and we went inside one on Oakland, was now it's Malcolm X Boulevard and Pine Street. So about 15 of us went inside this store, and we said we ordered different things from butcher, as to the butcher cut up meat a certain way for us, or buying stuff at the counter. Then we go to, when they ask for the pay for the food, we say, "Oh, I left my money in the car." We go in the car and not even come back. So people were having a powerful demonstration inside the store, let them know we were angry what they're doing. We're going. This is a new day in the community. So if you order 10 pounds of drumsticks and then you say, that's amount, I don't want it. You turn around and you were causing frustration. And then there were people who were buying stuff in the store and leaving it in their shopping carts and just clogging us. And then there were some things that actually got broken. Some tomatoes got squashed, a gallon of milk got dropped, things like that. But it was nothing compared to what the owners of the store had ended up charging us with. They charged us with damage to that store of over $250.
Mm.
By law, that's considered a felony offense. It's called destruction of private property over the value of $200, and it's a felony charge. So I, along with another brother named Matthew Johnson, we were charged of being the leaders of this boycott. So we were all charged with this crime, so-called crime. We found out about it because we went to a justice of the peace court before we even knew we had been charged with this. We were protesting uh, a charge by a security officer that was at Good Luck Supermarket, who was charging us with threatening his life.
Mm.
Good Luck Supermarket was a popular place in our community. That was one of the places we would pass out flyers. We would have conversation with people, and the security guard came up to some of us and said, "You cannot pass out literature here. We said, what you talking about, man? It's a free country. We can just, you can't tell us we can't distribute newsletters or flyers. So he interpreted that as threatening on his life. So he took us, he charged us, and we had to go before a justice of the peace court, Judge Richburg, who is now known as the hanging judge in Oak Cliff because he was
Mm.
prosecuting men, right and left, black men especially, locking them up on, put them on peace bond, and he would be on his phone talking about selling cattle on his farm while holding trial. So while we're being
Wow.
charged with threatening this security guard's life, somebody walked in the store and walked into the judge's chamber and said, these men were in my store 2 nights ago and they destroyed my property. And so he stopped what he was doing with the justice, with the peace bond charge of threatening security guards' life, and then of dropping that case altogether and told us we were under arrest. This was totally arbitrary. There was no actual warrant for our arrest, anything like that. He just had us locked up. That was Matthew Johnson and myself. And so that was how we were charged and singled out. But the demonstrations, the boycott continued. And at one point, the owners of the store said, we want to sell this store to you guys. We know we can't make any money. Our days are over. So we're going to just, we'll let you have it. So we contacted a black businessman in our community. His name was Tony Davis. He ran
Mm.
a company called Incipia Magazine. He was very popular, very well known businessman. So he arranged for us to communicate with a company out of Atlanta, Georgia. It's called Jet Foods. It's a black-owned supermarket chain. And they had agreed to come and look at the facilities we wanted them to purchase, and they would set up where we could be shared owners in this. We just had to put up a certain amount of dollars, and they would finance the rest. So we started sending out, we made our own little coupons that said you own a share of stock in OK supermarkets, and you would people would pay $10 for a share of stock, $5 or $2, whatever it was. So we were beginning to raise money to purchase those stores and transfer the ownership. But the state of Texas picked up the charges against me, and they arrested me and charged me with this felony. And that's how we had to kind of discontinue. We shifted our attention from buying the store, not wholeheartedly, but for the most part, and began to try to raise funds to get me and Matthew out of jail, to get us attorneys, to get us bonded out, and things like that. So that's how they kind of manipulated us. And it would have been a great victory for us if we had persisted with pursuing ownership and transferred ownership from OK Supermarket to Just Foods. But we were under attack by the FBI, by the Alcohol Tax Division. They were raiding our homes. They were putting guns against the heads of children in
Right.
West Dallas projects and saying y'all had illegal weapons. They kicked in the door of my house when I finally got on bond and charged me with owning a rifle illegally, although I had purchased it over over the counter at a regular store like Target's. And but they said that since I've been charged and convicted of a felony, it was against the law for me to own a rifle. But my case was under appeal, so there was no reason why they should be charged because I had not been finally convicted of any felony. It was out
Right.
on bond and we were charged with. So we were facing J. Edgar Hoover. We were facing the racist regime of Texas Democrats and Republicans. We had an all-white city council. We had just an array of pressures against us that were rain. In fact, the city council of Dallas, Texas, tried to hold a city council meeting where they came up with a vote of, all the majority white councilmen to, enact what they call a riot act. This was a time when there were riots going on in Detroit, Los Angeles, and Watts, and different places. So they were trying to be going ahead and make sure it didn't happen in Dallas. So they created what they call an anti-riot act. And this was illegal, and we were fighting against it, but it would call for it. The law said that if there's any 2 or 3 persons in South Dallas organizing or on the streets conspiring to destroy or start a riot, they could be immediately arrested. So that was
Wow.
just arbitrary that we had ACLU and other lawyers fighting against that, but they had even enacted this crazy unconstitutional law. So these were kind of things that were going on. To the whole purpose of the FBI involvement was to destroy the black movement from coast to coast, not only the African American movement for liberation, but the American Indian movement, the Chicano movement, the anti-war movement, as well as the women's movement. So all these forces had working together to make sure that the legacy of Dr. King, who had been slain in Memphis, Tennessee, a few months ago, before this came about, the whole country was in flames, fighting back and showing their anger at taking away our leaders like Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King. So there's a whole lot going on there, but we were trying to focus on what was happening there in front of us, but we got sidetracked. So I just want to say that as a lesson learned. For example, we have this neo-Nazi, ultra-right president, ultra-racist president in office who's churned out 200 more executive orders. Each one of them is to overwhelm us, to shock us, to convince us we can't do anything, to break our spirit, and to enact things will distract us from continuing to fight for liberation. So I just want to encourage everyone out there who listens to you to know that we've been given an assignment by our ancestors. It's been passed on to us, and we have to fulfill our assignment. And it's to stay focused, stay directed, stay aimed, continue, do not fall into any traps, any tricks to dissuade us from carrying out our focus. That means to me, it means honoring your neighbors. It means building community. It means cleaning up and brightening up the spot where you are. It could mean voting. It could mean protest. It could mean marching. But whatever you God-given talent is, we want you to translate into action, to do what you believe and what you are, and that is a descendant of brave people who came before you. So I just want to let you know that we learned a lot from that lesson. This whole period that we've been in this country for 400 years has been one step forward and two steps back. So we've gone through all of that from in 1857 when the Supreme Court ruled that no black man in the United States has any right that a white person is bound to respect. So we're back to those same old days again. And that led off to Civil War. Civil War was victorious for the South, for the North, defeating the South, but we were put back enslaved and chained on the plantation, became sharecroppers. So you have one victory, and then they put push back. So we want to make sure we keep our eyes on the prize, never take our eyes off what our mission is, our focus that's been handed to us by our ancestors, and keep on keeping on.
Let me ask you a question. First of all, I appreciate you for explaining all that. I was telling Mr. Fullenwider a few days back that it's only a handful of people I can just ask one question to, and they can kind of explain in great detail. And you've shown me to be one of those persons as well. So thank you for
Well,
explaining all
you asked the very pressing question that required me to go into more detail, but thank you for asking it. And I hope
that.
I shared a lesson, a little light on the subject, and encourage people to investigate, think critically, to analyze situations before they jump into it.
Right, most definitely. I do have a question, one other question in regards to SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinator Committee, which, correct me if I'm wrong, you were basically the coordinator or the chairperson of the organization at that time. How did that start? What year did it start, Student Nonviolent Coordinator Committee, and just how did you figure out that I'm going to be a part of SNCC?
Okay. It was pretty easy for me because SNCC started out of the campaign to have sit-ins in the Deep South. In those days, you can buy a cup of coffee at a counter downtown and in the stores or counter markets or business because they were segregated. So there were four black men out of Greensboro, North Carolina, who decided these days are over. We need to protest by sitting in on the lunch counter and demanding our rights and demanding service. They were beaten up, hauled into jail, and that little incident in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1960 led to a whole prairie fire of outbursts and calling and standing up for your rights throughout the Deep South. So you had not only the sit-in movement at the lunch counters, but you had freedom rides where people were riding on public transportation like Greyhounds or Trailway buses, and then they were coming across South. You had to move from your seat when you get past the Mason-Dixie line and sit in the back. So they were protesting those kind of things. There was a lot of heat, a lot of fuel, a lot of energy being generated by the Black community, especially in the Deep South, to change what was going on. What was so important about the Deep South is that that's where the majority of Black people lived, but in the Deep South, you had no Black representation. So you had people being elected who were white to Congress, to state, to the United States Senate, to state government, year after year after year, and you would build up seniority. So you had people in control of the Armed Forces Committee, to Ways and Means Committee, all these different powerful committees, labor, all of those were run by white people. And they came from the South, because the South, where white leadership came from, being elected time and time again because Black people were not given the power or the right or respected to vote. So the campaign for SNCC started out of the sit-ins. But Dr. Martin Luther King was approached by his executive secretary, a sister by the name of Ella Baker, who said to King, "We need to tap into the energy of these young people. They're doing something great." I think Dr. King's intention was to bring us all together and make us a part of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. But Ella Baker stood firm. She said, "Look, let's leave it up to them what they want to do. And they have the power and they should exercise their right and build what kind of organization they want." So out of that meeting, instead of becoming a part of SCLC, we would create our own organization, SNCC. And that was in 1961. I
Mm.
was I was in high school when that happened. And when I came to Georgia to go to school at Morehouse College in 1964, I that was the headquarters for SNCC. So I was about 6 blocks away from the SNCC headquarters. I was invited to by a loudspeaker truck going through the neighborhood saying, "Come downtown to protest racism in this restaurant." The restaurant was owned by the soon-to-be governor of Georgia, Lester Maddox. He had a restaurant that was refusing to let any Black person in the place to get served. In fact, he was handing out axe handles and billy clubs to any white person in the store. You could beat up any Black person that came inside that store. So I participated in that demonstration. We had a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week demonstration. And I ran into the guys for SNCC, and I found out I asked them, how can I get more involved? So they told me to come on down and volunteer. I began sweeping the floor, cleaning up desks. And then I was promoted, I guess you said, but I wasn't getting paid, to actually answer the phone. And answering the phone was just a revelation to me what was going on in the South. They had a telephone system that connected all their different chapters in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, West Virginia, all of it from Virginia to East Texas. So I was answering the phone and hearing people saying they just arrested Bill Smith. They just burned up this church. They just uh, attacked this person. They just bombed this car. So I was getting all these calls and said, "What am I doing here taking messages? I need to get involved." So I was moved to say, I want to do more. I want to get involved. But I was too young to actually have permission to join. I was 19 years old. I had to get my father's or my mother's permission to sign. They didn't want to do it. They told me, "Look, son, you can't waste your college years. You can't get off of this. You need to pursue your dreams." I said, "This is my dream. This is what I want to do. This is where I could be a real service to the community." So they reluctantly, but they finally blessed me by signing the permission for me to join SNCC. SNCC only had 150 people on staff. I became one of those 150. We were called field secretaries. We were paid $10 a week. We got a promotion one year where we got $35 a week every 2 weeks. But we were on, and we didn't even need those money because the people in Mississippi, the farmers, the sharecroppers, the ordinary people in the Deep South were providing us with places to live. They were feeding us. They were helping us with transportation. All we had to do was just show up, and they were there. And they sacrificed their homes. They sacrificed their churches. They sacrificed their very lives by just daring to vote, to register to vote. So if you were registered to vote and your boss found out about it, your boss was white, you could be fired. If you were living on some land that belonged to a white person and they knew you voted, they would evict you from the land, or they would
Wow.
beat you up, or they'd knock you down in the middle of the street and tell nigga you can't vote. So we began to reinforce this desire, this burning desire from our people to change the lives they had been living, to uplift their communities. And they gave their life, they gave their soul, not just in support of us, but risking their life to go and vote. And they protected us too. We were a nonviolent organization, but we lived on farms and housing and tenant farm and share shops where people protected us. They had guns. They were in the trees. They were on the property line. They were protecting us. And so if somebody drove in there and they didn't flash their headlights a certain way, they would be shot at. Because there was a certain way you could pass them. You had to blink your lights a certain way to get in. Otherwise, they would defend us from these Ku Klux Klanners and these Nazis who were trying to keep us from organizing. I want to say one
Wow.
thing. There's a difference between organizing and mobilizing.
Okay.
Organizing means knocking on doors, talking to people, building networks, and putting together forces and sustaining it, building a true, deep, deeply embedded communities force. Mobilizing means cranking up people to go march or to go scream and shout, whatever. And so one is the mobilized party may make something immediate. Uh, Organizing was something more ongoing and more lasting because a person who march today, you might not see them ever again. But if you organize it, you're connected with them, you're building. So we wanted to go beyond just marching or protesting for one or two issues. We wanted to see deeper change. We want to see the people organized to the point where they could change the whole system, make a revolution in a sense, rather than just make reforms or change a law or change an incident. So organizing is the key that builds mobilization, and mobilization without organizing is not going to last too long. I just want to encourage our people to think about how we can organize more effectively, how we can build lasting ties that can be resilient and uh, flexible enough to withstand outside pressures and to get the job done. So it's got to be something that's for life. It's a process building organizations. And I want to encourage our community, my brothers and sisters in Dallas and all around, to reinvestigate the power of organizing and increase our chances for self-determination 10 times, 100 times rather than just mobilizing for one issue or another, and then we don't see you ever again. We got to stay in touch, build a long-lasting organization that aim for the long haul.
Well, since you brought that up, and I'm glad that you stated all that, and you kind of made that distinction, and made it plain for us to understand. So we definitely appreciate you for doing that. If you could, because I know you kind of short on time, just briefly, if you could, I know you wrote a book. Could you kind of if for lack of a better term, promote your book and tell us about your book and what it's about more so?
Oh, thank you. It's actually two books.
Okay.
One is a book of my memoirs. It's called Standing, One Man's Odyssey Through the Turbulent 60s. And the other one is called Kneeling, uh, the actions and thoughts and dreams that transcend the 60s. So with my memoirs is based on my life growing up in Dallas and all the way to when I went to prison and came out of prison and became a fugitive of the law, sort of as I'm called, and been underground to build an underground railroad in the 1970s. The, the book of poetry is also short stories that dramatize and highlight the pillars, the foundations of struggle, and how people can mobilize and hopefully something that can inspire them to look beyond the surface, look deeply more into yourself for the power that we've inherited from our ancestors and our God and the mighty Creator, and look at how we can bring those forces, that energy, those resources, that talent out to serve the community. So I think they are complementary books. The one is more biographical rather, and the other is more poetic per se, but they work together. The whole idea is to walk on two legs, you know,
Right.
actual, the historical, as well as the spirit. So they contain both in each book.
Gotcha. Well, we definitely do appreciate you so much for your time, your wisdom, your knowledge. I know we just got a little bit of a piece of it tonight. I know you're oftentimes in Dallas, and I know that we did get a chance to sit down briefly. You know, I know Judah organized a great event, and
Yeah,
I
it was
was
great.
present there. So
That have a
uh,
connection. Yeah.
I look forward to having the opportunity to shake your hand again in person. I look forward to that. And like I said, from myself and for those that are close to me, we appreciate you so much for the many sacrifices that you have made in your lifetime for the upliftment of Black people in this country and really worldwide as well. So we thank you for giving your time at this point.
And I salute you, my brother, for the work you're doing. It's so powerful, it's so relevant, and the connection you're making, just the light you're bringing to our community. So I want you to encourage you to keep on keeping on, okay? Don't quit. Let's keep it going. Let's
Yes,
go
sir.
forward together. Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Easy. Thank you.